Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of Tech Pixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I am here today with Sarah Taylor Phillips, who is a talent expert and a career navigator. And she's going to help us dive into the 5 secrets to getting hired over the age of 50. And we have a lot of women in the Tech Pixie community that are over the age of 50. We now have quite a few women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s in our program. And let's dive right in, Sarah. What are our top 5 secrets to getting hired over the age of 50?
Okay, cool. Well, great to be here, Joy. Thanks for having me, and lovely to see you all. Right, the great thing about we'll go through the 5 secrets getting hired at 50 plus, but I think one of the things we need to remember is at 50, we have crystallized wisdom, which is so exciting. So when you're in your 20s and your 30s, 40s, you have fluid intelligence. And basically, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it kind of grows, but it does tail off towards late 40s, early 50s. But what we have in our 50s we have, well, all the way through our lifetime, we have what we call crystallized wisdom. And that's kind of cumulative wisdom. And it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. In our 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, even, it's growing. So if you think of your intelligence or what you know as, let's say, books in a library, okay? When you're in your mid-20s, your library books kind of come halfway around the first wall. But when you're over 50, your library books are covering kind of 3.5 walls now. So you've got a lot of books, a lot of wisdom and experience to draw from. And that is the beauty of over 50s in the workplace, basically at work. So whenever you are looking to get hired when you're over 50, that's something to bear in mind. You're overqualified, you know loads of stuff. Somebody might employ you as a marketing person, but you can bring your people management skills, you can bring your digital skills, you can bring, I don't know, your HR skills, you can bring all of these other things that you know to the party. Whereas when you're in your mid-20s, if you're a marketer, I was a marketer, that was my first career, and I brought marketing to the party and not a lot of else. Now I can bring so much more. But we'll go through the 5 secrets, shall we? So I think the first thing to remember is it all starts with you. Okay, so it's all about you. So forget jobs, forget the job market. It's so overwhelming. Where do you start? It's impossible to know. So it all starts with you, brand you. And what you do, I know, Joy, you do a lot of work with this, but it's about finding what you love. It's about knowing your superpowers, your strengths, what motivates you, what you're passionate about. And that is key to your USP, really, or what makes you really unique, special, and different. So I know the Tech Pixies, if you work with Tech Pixies, you'll be doing this anyway, but basically it all starts with you. So when you've got your brand new compass in front of you, and at Career Voyage we give you a brand new compass, when you've got that bit of paper in front of you which tells you which office environments you like to work in, what you want your boss to be like, whether you want to work in a small company, whether you want to be an oil tanker, or whether you want to go around the world single-handed in your yacht. Basically, it's all of those things. And when you understand those about you, it makes it really easy to look at the job market or a job you want or a job you need, because you don't have to look at the whole market. You just look at this bit of the market.
I think you're right. It's a big mistake people make is they don't really get clear on what they would love and they sort of just take whatever's around. And I think then that leads to dissatisfaction. And so, it is absolutely possible to craft a vision for what you would love, to get clarity on that. And like you said, it's what do I want the office to look like and feel like? Do I want to go into the office? Do I want to be, like you said, on my yacht, traveling the world? Like how, and actually writing it down, getting it out of your head, and thinking about the way that you want to be treated, who you want to work with, do you want to be do you want to have people reporting to you? All those things, very important.
Absolutely. And I think as well, what you can do, so a lot of this work, the all about you work, the brand new work, really, it's about, I'm a marketer, so it's like branding, really. So you're digging for insights, you're looking back at your whole life or your whole career for information. So think about, when you were in an organization where you love working, and think about the people you did love working with. All of those things they're keys, aren't they? They're kind of keys to the answer of what you want to do work-wise. And I think it's
Well,
so important.
at the same time, if you don't, a lot of people say, I don't know what I want. And what you can say is, well, you know what you don't want, right? So,
Exactly.
what you don't
Exactly.
want. So then
Yeah.
use that instead of saying, this is what I don't want, use that to be the blueprint for what you do want. And that makes a
Sure.
huge difference.
Absolutely. And the other thing about doing what you don't want, or knowing what you don't want, is, and that's, go and experiment, because you don't have to go into your perfect dream job now. You can have what I call it a job for now. So go and do a job for now, and you'll learn if you don't like it quite quickly. And the great thing about doing something you don't like is it really motivates you towards something you do like, or it helps you articulate what you do like. So,
a job for now. I love that.
yeah.
What in one of the books that I recommend that our students read, there's a whole chapter about being a person of increase, meaning wherever you go, you create an environment and a connection with people where they walk away feeling like they got something out of the interaction in a positive way. And his point in the book is you can be a person of increase no matter what position you're in. And that will, that will put you in good stead for the next thing. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. Once you do something, you will realize relatively quickly whether or not it's right for you. The mistake I think a lot of people make in that situation is they stay.
They do.
Instead of reconnecting with the vision and reminding themselves, okay, actually now I know this is what I don't want. And then having the courage to move on when it's not right.
Yeah. And I think a lot, this whole, the whole framework, the whole kind of navigating your career, it requires courage, doesn't it? From the heart, that wholehearted courage that Brené Brown talks about. It's about, you have to be brave, and you have to be courageous, and
be brave and sparkle. That's our hashtag. All right.
Absolutely.
So Sarah, what's secret number 2? So secret number 1 is brand you.
Okay. Secret number 2. Secret number 2 is know where you're headed. Okay, so that vision. Now the vision can change. Okay, so say you decide you want to, I don't know, be an HR director, but actually you're kind of, I don't know, you're in the HR director role, or you just don't like it, or on the way to the HR director role, you're working as a HR manager and you really love that. You can change direction, but know where you're headed, because if you know where you're going, it's much more straightforward to get there, basically. If you don't know where you're going, if you aren't heading anywhere, you're kind of all at sea and in limbo, and that's when you get stuck. So your destination can change, but know where it is.
Okay, so there's a slight difference between brand you and knowing where you're headed. Brand you is, what are my values? What do I care about? What do I want things to feel like and look like? Whereas Absolutely. Secret number 2, know where you're headed, is really that navigational tool of, what am I going to be doing beyond this? What's the 10-year picture? What's the bigger picture? Yeah, and that's such a great point, because I heard Dame Helena Morrissey once. So I got to hear her speak live. It was amazing. She's got, I think, 9 children, and her husband is like a Zen Buddhist monk or something like that. Anyway, she is a CEO and has been for a while. And she said that the biggest mistake women who want to be CEOs make is they don't go into their career saying, I want to be a CEO. They just think it'll eventually be given to them. And her point is that female CEOs are never given the female CEO role. You have to have a very strategic plan for how you're going to become a CEO. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really great advice. And I think what you're saying here is, what's the end game? Yeah. And how are you going to work your way towards that? And like you said, once you're on the road and you're headed there, you might take a detour, you might go a different way, but you got to know where you're headed in order to even assess where you are on that roadmap.
Absolutely. And I think a life lesson from me, what I've learned, I don't know, in all my kind of career transitions, I think what I would definitely do is look 5 years and 10 years ahead. I think sometimes you're so stuck in your lifestyle, depending on where you are life-wise, that you can't see further than 6 months or a year. And I would definitely try and make decisions for the longer term rather than the shorter term. I think that's really important.
Yeah, so I agree with that. What we say at Tech Pixies is, if you do 3 years, that's enough time for your brain to say, I can't put limitations on this, but it's not too much for it to feel so far away that it's not possible. So I think so I do think 3 years is really good. And I do remember whenever someone said to give think about a 10-year plan, I was like, I can't even.
Yeah, you're right.
But also, let's be honest there. I've had one of the most heart-wrenching, but also real moments in Tech Pixies was, this is very early on. We always have a vision piece at Tech Pixies, and it's changed over the years. It's evolved. on its own our vision is on its own roadmap. But one of the women who came, she'd just come out the back of breast cancer, and she was sort of breast cancer free at that point in time. And she said, I really had a hard time doing the 10-year thing, because just a year ago, I didn't think I was going to be here 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So I also think for women over 50, it's a real thing. I mean, I don't know the exact statistics, but it's quite high, the number of women who get breast cancer, and the number of women who survive breast cancer. But I think it's being able to still have a vision for your life and your future, regardless of what is going on in it, because we have to be able to have hope and a vision for something. And our brain has to have something to focus on. And so, I think that's really important, but it's something to also acknowledge for women over 50 that, for some women who are coming off the back of breast cancer or off the back of a cancer recovery, that might be a challenging, tricky exercise to do. However, right now they're breathing and their heart's beating and the blood's flowing through their body. So, they're alive today. So they have the power of now. And even if that power of now is to make a 3-year plan, it's a plan. And then you've got something to focus on.
Absolutely. And I think actually game changer number 3 is, we'll call it mindset magic. So it's all about kind of mindset and attitude. And, I think, so that's just a time with your last point, but actually a lot of job searching or getting hired is about self-care. You really have to look after you. And sometimes it is the right time to, job search. Sometimes it isn't. So if if you've had a really adverse, and let's face it, at 50, I don't know if you follow Eleanor Mills. You must meet her. She's amazing. And Noon, the platform noon.org. So she's kind of changing the narrative of women midlife, and she's doing some amazing work, and she's doing some work in the job space as well. But the narrative's changing, and we're looking at 100-year lives now. So 50 is kind of halfway through. But what they say about women at 50 is we've all had a number of adverse life experiences, which make us more resilient, which is help, kind of helps us with that wisdom piece, really. I've seen it all before piece. But yeah, so you're right. There's adverse experiences. You might want to downsize your job hunt, or you might not want to go for that massive, huge job. You might want to do something that's more mindful, or fits in with your life. I think we do upsize and downsize careers, don't we, depending on where we are life-wise and kind of big event-wise. So there we go. So so secret number 3, mindset magic. Just look after you. Honestly, we have a well-being wheel. So we've got myself, which is all the stuff that you love doing that's good for your soul. We've got the wealth piece of the well-being wheel, and that's kind of finances, and then your career, which is financial asset as well. And then we've got your health piece, and that's emotional health and physical health, and mental health and physical health. So you have to look after that. You cannot go job searching all day long, and do nothing else, because you'll get burnt out. And job search, if you're doing it online, it's brutal, it's inhumane, it's awful. So yeah, there's a different way. We'll talk about that later, but there's a different way of job searching besides just kind of, applying online, not hearing from anybody, getting ghosted, which is just, you need to look after yourself. You need to do whatever gives you joy. When you're on a job search, because it's tough. It's tough out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I recently talked about this on LinkedIn publicly. It took me a while to get to a place where I could talk about it publicly. But for a lot of people in the online learning industry, the companies just went crazy in 2020, 2021, because everyone was home and available to learn.
Yeah.
And then obviously 2022 was a real shift, and the method by which people sold online learning changed as well, because if anyone was using Facebook ads, etc. So we had a real shift from about October 2021 in the business to about May of 2022, where everything that we knew just completely changed, and really some of our competitors sort of disappeared from the landscape, and I had to make a decision as to what I was going to do, and in a real moment of belief in probably myself, but more the system that I could put into place, I took a leap of faith that we could keep going no matter what, that we would figure it out. But it also did mean that I had a 7-month period of time where I didn't have a salary from the company, and I had to go back out into the job world to look for jobs. And actually,
You said,
oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. First of all, finding a job that paid me the rate that really I believe I'm worth, and
you deserve.
with the skill set I have and that I deserve, at a part-time, because I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing at Tech Pixies. On a part-time basis, I had about 20 hours to give to somebody to do that sort of work. And it just didn't exist. Like, absolutely did not exist. And I was very, very, very lucky. I did go for a job. I got a job offer, and I just said, I can't do it at that salary. The salary was, and I have an amazing woman who comes and helps every week. She's in the house. She's a mother of 5. She's a widow. And
Wow,
she's been working with us for 7 years. She's come to our house every week for 7-8 years. So, but they were offering to pay me less than what I paid her to come in and help me in the house. And it was for a sales job. And I just, and yes, there's an upside on the sales that you're going to make more money if you make the sales, but it was in an industry that wasn't easy to make sales in at this point in time. So anyway, I turned it down. But then when I was, and then I got really, really lucky. My daughter's school had a job that came up, and she's at a private school, which we really felt adamantly was the right school for her, which is why we picked it. But, obviously private school, you've got a tuition to pay, right? And all of a sudden I have no salary. And so a reception job came up at the school, and it came with a tuition reduction. And so I put myself forward for it. And I thought, well, this is a bonus. It's a win-win. I get to be at the school my daughter's at. I get the tuition reduction. And, I get a job that and also the other thing that was great for me was, if I was going to take a lower salary, I needed a job that I didn't have to, it wasn't going to tax me mentally, in the sense that, like, my work at Tech Pixies is really, there's a lot of thinking and knowledge and moving plates and, lots of pieces. I needed something where I could sit, answer the phone, send some emails. I could leave it and come, not have to take it home with me. But I was really shocked at how small the opportunities were. And even when I looked at jobs that I would be interested in, like in tech and things that were more, probably more challenging and would pay better, they didn't have part-time jobs. It was only full-time.
That's why there's no women in. That's why there's no diversity in tech.
They say that it's hard to get jobs in tech, but actually, you cannot, as a woman with children, quite frankly, if you want to be around a little bit, it's impossible to work full-time at a tech company. It really is, unless someone else is raising your kids. So that was interesting to me. Was, anyway, long story short, I just want to say, and I'm not even in my 50s yet, but I found it demoralizing and challenging to look for jobs and just recognize nobody was going to pay me what I was worth. And that was challenging. And I couldn't get part-time. That was the most frustrating thing for my skill set. I couldn't get part-time for my skill set because, and of course now that's all shifted and it's, it's all worked out.
Oh, good. I mean, thank goodness. But I think, Joy, as well, that's such, you know what, I wouldn't have put you through that for anything, but actually the fact that you know how difficult it is to land a role, that will add to your Tech Pixies offer, won't it? And that will add to your huge purpose of what you're trying to do in the world. I've been applying for roles as in assignments, as part of my portfolio career. And because I've been applying, I really know how tough it is. I'm not sitting here going, oh, it's really tough, talking about other people applying. When you do it yourself, you see it for yourself and you feel it, and it's tough. It's tough out there.
Well, and I'll share this story because I think it's really important, because this is where things shifted for me, and it's literally shifted in the last week. Well, a couple weeks. I got to a place where the company, during these 7 months, the company started to stabilize, and then it started to go every month, started to get better and better and stronger and stronger. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, within the next 3 months, if we keep this trend going, I'm going to be okay to sort of take a salary again on a, I can replace the reception job, if that makes sense. I can sort of swap the job. So I was supposed to keep the job until July 7th. And I really wanted to keep that commitment, but then I really had this feeling that if I just took a leap of faith, that it was all going to work out and continue to work. And I had evidence that it was going in the right direction, that I could sort of make the decision. So I gave them a 10-week notice, which I only had to give them 4 weeks, but I gave them 10 weeks notice because it was Easter. And I said, okay, give them a little bit extra time. And part of my brain was like, well, they're not going to find someone really quickly. And then I was like, wait, hang on, let's not put that out into the universe. Like they might find the perfect person within a couple days. And it turns out they have. So I don't know, I don't know all the details, and I don't know when I'm going to leave and they're going to come in, but it's going to probably happen definitely by the time frame that I wanted, if not faster. But then the really cool thing, and this is really important, and I think this is a great message on mindset. So I had a conversation with a coach of mine who I just absolutely have so much respect for. And I think coaches need coaches. So if you're a coach listening to this and you don't have a coach, you got to get a coach, or you need to have a coach if you want people to be, if you want to coach people. Anyway, he said to me, if I could hire you, I'd hire you right now and I'd pay you, $200,000 a year. And I was like, and I was in tears because it was the first person who in a very ever had said to me a salary that in my head I had been saying I would love to have that. And of course I knew at that time that wasn't something that they could really offer. So it was sort of like, it was probably a little bit to build up my self-esteem. But what I walked away thinking is really important for women that their self-worth isn't determined by what someone else says they're worth, right? Like, in one sense, I was pumped up because someone said I was worth a couple $100,000 a year. On the other sense, I'm earning, like less than what I pay the person that comes to my house to help me out. And so really important that our worth is not tied into what someone else says it is. And I was flattered, but I also, there's a part of me that was like, yep, that's where I want to be. Right. So, and it reaffirmed where I was. But what it did in a funny way is it just made me reflect on the fact that we shouldn't have our worth tied into what someone else says they would pay us, because we have to know who we are. And if we know who we are, then we're going to be more likely to attract the salary. Anyway, long story short, I'm doing all the paperwork and everything else, but I'm now doing some coaching the coaches training. So I'm now going to be a coach for coaches on a part-time basis with a really good salary, the salary that I always wanted, not, it's going towards where I want to go. And it's not full-time. It works around technical season. I can keep doing everything. And it's a beautiful move forward. But I think I had to go through all the steps. And I think when you're in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you're going back in, you might have to go back in at a lower entry point, but that might take time to figure out what you want to do next. But,
absolutely,
things work out if you know where you're headed.
They do. And you've got a portfolio now, haven't you? And portfolio is sometimes the answer. So you think, oh no, I want this, this perfect permanent, one job, but then you dig a bit further, or actually it kind of doesn't look like that when you kind of get that. That's my experience anyway. And I think just to mention that, going in at a lower rate, I live near Bristol. I went to an event there, I don't know, a few months ago, and there was some big kind of board, female on boards, it's a big hitting event, and they'd all gone in at a much lower level after career breaks, but they'd all got to the top faster. So sometimes you do have to take a step back to move 3 steps forward.
The other thing about going in and getting a job, and for me, that
job for now,
the job for now, I love the job for now. The other thing that was great about that was that it definitely affirmed for me that I'm the boss.
That you should be doing tech pixes. That you absolutely that
I like being the boss, and I like being a leader. Like, that was the thing. And one of the things that was difficult in that role, and actually I really loved the role, and I loved being with the girls, and I really loved that role. But one thing that was challenging for me was recognizing that I like the leadership roles, and also recognizing by being underneath people again, learning what it's like. Because if you've been at the top for a long time in your own business, and then suddenly you're at the bottom, you get a new perspective on how do I treat my employees? How do I interact with my employees? How do I, how do I treat them? So I got a real flip of perspective on being the boss versus being the employee. That was a gift as well. So, there's all sorts of, there's all sorts of mindset magic that happens as you step into these things. All right. So secret number 4, tell me secret number 4.
Secret number 4 is visibility and findability. So guess what? If nobody knows you're available for work, nobody's going to ask you to go and work for them. And, it's not shaming, is it? But, to say open to work or I'm looking for a role, it doesn't feel great. But if you say that, guess what? You'll get work. And I think a friend of mine, she's just written herself into a job. So she wrote that she had I think she was up for a number of roles. They all came crash, because you have to come first, don't you, on a job hunt? Coming second, coming third doesn't cut it. I think I spoke to her on the Monday. She thought she was going to come first in 2 of the roles, and she came second in both of them. So on the Monday, she was kind of on her knees. So she wrote this really heartfelt, amazing LinkedIn profile, to her network, and she has got an extremely amazing network. It was a very vulnerable post, and I think the blog was called Alex versus the Algorithm, because the algorithm does say no a lot on LinkedIn and in all job searches. And guess what? She had 4 headhunters contact her after that. 10 people, no, not 10 people, but people, contacts of hers who she hadn't worked with or heard from for 10 years contacted her, and she got an assignment. She started yesterday, actually. She posted that blog maybe 3 weeks ago, and she started her assignment yesterday. So if you're visible, you can get out, you can write yourself into a job and tell your network. Tell your network. Your network will find you a job rather than the online job boards.
Well, and that's why you need to be, quite frankly, that's why you need to be on LinkedIn, and that's why you need to be talking to people on LinkedIn.
Yes.
We have a whole module at Tech Pixies on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And
LinkedIn's
it is
huge.
brilliant for just getting everything set up properly. But, it's that daily, just little comments, following and connecting with people in your industry, people you want to work with, being engaged in the conversation, going to networking events, and just being visible. You are so 100% right. And I do find that women of a certain age, and we're talking, perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, there's challenges with being visible, but they, like you said, you've got this crystallized knowledge, and that knowledge is so important, and experience, and actually, getting out there and connecting with people, it might feel scary at first, but from a neurological, and from a neuroscience perspective, it's once you start taking action and connecting with people, it gets easier and easier and easier. And so being visible is something that is really, like you said, it's a requirement, because if no one can see you and they can't find you, it's almost impossible to get a job. But I think 100%, the order that you're talking about these things are very important, because also if you don't know who you are and you don't know where you're going and you don't have that mental resilience, then you're going to put yourself out there and not know what you're trying to attract to you.
Exactly. And that's so true. So LinkedIn, you can have a LinkedIn profile. You can have a LinkedIn profile. It looks one way when you're not looking for a job, and it looks a different way if you are looking for a job, and you transmit from it a lot more if you are looking for a role. And you need, it's marketing. You need to have key messages. You need to be in certain groups on LinkedIn, and that really, really, it definitely helps. And you'll see all of the you'll see all of your stats on LinkedIn going up, basically, kind of as you do it. But it's huge, and it's marketing. I'm a brand marketer, so awareness. People have got to be aware that you're looking for a role. If they're not, then they're not going to help you, basically. And I think the other thing, actually, I'm just thinking about it now, but visible, that vulnerableness we talked about earlier. Do reach out. Reaching out, so difficult. And, it makes you so scared. But do you know what? That's when people will help you. Everybody wants to help you, and especially your network. So it feels very vulnerable, but reach out and let people know. You don't have to do it publicly. You can private message people or call people or just have coffees with people, but let them know you're looking for something, because it's not about them. It's about the 10 people they know, isn't it?
That is such great advice. And we have a tech pixie who, I think she was out. She had gone out. She was a consultant, and she'd been out for about, I know, at least 12 years, but I think potentially it was even longer, like 17 years. And one of the things we said on the LinkedIn module is go and reconnect with all your old colleagues. Just direct message them, tell them that you're back on the job market, give them an update on what your life's been like, catch up with them, see what's going on. And she got literally right back into the consulting that she was doing before she took a break. They brought her in. I mean, and she did the most beautiful post on the morning that she was going into her first day of work. And she was so delighted to be doing it, but also, there was so much emotion that came with that. And, so being visible and then putting yourself out there, connecting with people, it all worked out. And I think there's enough stories out there, there's enough evidence out there that it can happen, that, you know, it's about really believing that it's possible and then taking action towards that every day. And like you said, people want to help you. All right, tell us secret number 5.
They do want to help you. They do want to. The other thing to say, actually, just quickly as an aside, I know we're running out of time, but you know, the UK working population, half of us are going to be over 50 in a few years' time. So this whole over 50 thing, do you know what? It's, hey, and being over 50, I'm way over 50. And do you know what? It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. There might be a few storms to get through, you know, menopause storm, get through it. Could be horrible, could be good, you know, but I tell you, it's a great time. So secret number five, most jobs aren't advertised. Okay, so we know this, don't we? So those jobs that are online that you're applying for and being ghosted on, or not hearing back, or hearing back but not getting, you know, you've got a 20% chance of landing a job via online, applying online. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, 80% of your roles will come from your network, or, you know, great headhunters and recruiters. And despite what people say, there are some great headhunters and recruiters who've got, you know, incredibly strong partnerships with organizations, and they're the guys to work with, or your own network. That's where 80%, you know, 80% chance of landing a role, that's where it'll come from. So just bear that in mind with your job search. Don't spend all day Googling. You know, you can Google searching for a job, and I love Googling. I talk about swimming. You know, you can Google swimming, can't you? Let's Google learn how to swim. Okay, Google learn. You don't get your hair wet. You don't have to dive in a pool. You don't get cold. Do you know what I mean? Job searching. You can't Google job search or apply online all the time. You've got to have some conversations. You've got to meet real people. You've got to go and knock on a door. You know, I live in Gloucestershire, not very far. You know, it's a couple of hours commute easily to London, work there a lot. But, you know, we've got all of this stuff on our doorstep. It's so exciting. Big companies, little companies, cyber, you know, there's all of this stuff on our doorstep, which you'd never have heard of. But those guys, they want people, and they don't know where to go and advertise or where to look for people. So do some local networking, and yeah, just remember those jobs aren't advertised. The other thing is, if you are going for an advertised job, you have a lot of competition. But if I walk to the organization down the road because I think their website looks hideous and it can't be getting them much business, and I offer, you know, to do their website, then I haven't got any competition, and I'll solve a business problem for them. And I expect they'll be really pleased to have me. And there you have it. I've just found my own job. And that's what all of this, you know, understanding what you're great at and what you love doing. Sometimes organizations don't know what they need. And as an outsider, you can see it more clearly. So we're kind of crafting our own jobs in a way. And it's you have to be creative and innovative, and it's quite exciting. It's quite scary. Or where do you start? But, you know, I think we don't fit into square pegs, basically, because we're not, you know, we don't fit into square holes, do we? I think recruiting often is about putting people in boxes. And guess what? I don't fit into a box. You know, I'm way too big for a box. So I have to go and find my own box I have to go and find my own space in that organization, rather than trying to squeeze myself into this box, which I don't really fit into.
That's a really good point, though, about most jobs not being advertised. And, you know, going back to that job that I didn't end up taking, I ended up meeting some amazing people who are no longer there, but then are now willing to help me with the things that I want to do. So that's the thing, is just even going for the jobs, whether you get them or not, you are making connections. You know, and also sometimes people will come back and say, hey, you know what, actually that person didn't work out, and we think we'd like to give you a chance or whatever. Those things are so important. But I think you're right. Most jobs aren't advertised. And if you're sitting there all the time online, that's less likely the way that you're going to get something than actually going out and meeting people and doing things and getting stuck in. And I mean, to be honest, all the jobs that I've ever gotten, that's really funny. I'll tell you one funny story. When I was adamant. So my dad very sadly passed away when I was 21 years old, right when I was graduating from college, like the year I graduated from college. So he died in March and I was graduating in May. And so I had been very adamant that I was not going to get a job with my dad's help. Like, I didn't want a job because my dad made a phone call. I didn't want that kind of a job. And then what was really funny, so I was really adamant about that. And then ironically, I was telling I think I was telling my professor, you know, that I wanted to get a job, or I wanted to do, and he said, oh, well, let me make a phone call. So my professor, my economics professor, made a phone call to a guy in Boston, and they hired me. And I was like, okay, so I just replaced my dad with my professor, you know, like, so, and of course, and then when my dad died, a bunch of his friends, you know, offered me jobs. And of course, I was so proud of the job that I'd gotten, you know, on my own, which I didn't get on my own. I got through my professor. But I think that was my first insight to, actually, you never get a job on your own. And, you know, and actually, if you have the connections and the strings to pull, you should use them, because
absolutely,
they're wonderful. That's what they're there for. The strings are there to be pulled. The connections are there to be used. And actually, how lucky and privileged are you if you've got them? And you know what? If you don't got them, then that's your opportunity to go and create them. Because, you know, in that funny example, I did have the connections, but I chose not to use the connections, and I went and created my own connections, which is, I ended up having to use that to get the job anyway. So I think I just find that really funny. But every job I've ever had has been, prior to Tech Pixies, one of the jobs I had, which was a really great stepping stone for me, was at Founders for Schools, which is a charity. And Sherry Kuchi,
yeah, that is a great charity.
Yeah. But I didn't start out as an employee. I started out as a volunteer. I ran their MailChimp, I ran their social media, I ran their blog. And then when they needed an employee, I was right there and already doing half the jobs that they needed someone to do. So I got a job there for a good 18 months or so. So I think, you know, if you know what you're interested in, you know what you like, you know, and you've got, you know what your skills are, it's a really fun way to move forward.
Volunteering is a really good way. That's not on my list of secrets, is it? But volunteering is a really good way that you can, you know, you can go and do something you're really passionate about and network and keep your confidence up and just be involved in really interesting things. So
But I do have a secret about volunteering.
Oh, I do. And do you know what? It's a Tech Pixies secret. And I'll never, this is one of the favorite things I've ever heard from you. And it was about knowing your worth, one of your financial pieces. And I do it. And you said, whenever you volunteer, because I think what happens, hey, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning in the old days, you know, for less than £300. And then you become, you know, a school mum and you're like, okay, I'll do it for nothing, you know, and I'll spend 20 hours of my time doing this, that, and the other for nada. And you said, make sure if you do any volunteering, send an invoice, the pro form invoice. Yep. Didn't you?
Yes, you do.
Free of charge, but value that time and send the person the invoice. And you are so right, because do you know what? I got caught in the volunteering trap, because I spent my whole life volunteering, and that's a great portfolio and it's so passionate about everything. But you know, in that diagram, the Ikigai diagram, I'm missing the bit you get paid for. And thank you for that.
Yeah, so this is my gift to the world. If you are volunteering, put a timestamp on it. Make sure you have a time limit, 6 to 12 weeks max. Don't go over that. And then you send an invoice every single month with 100% discount. And, you know, you will know how much time and effort you've put in. They will know how much time and effort you've put in. And at the end of the 3 months, you will have said, look, I've given this company 6,000 pounds of my, or charity, or time, you know, 6,000 pounds of my time, energy, effort. And I'm so grateful that I could give them that gift. And it's a gift, and you gave it to them, and then you move on. But it's so, so, so important to do that step, because women, until they do that step, they don't see the value of what they're giving away that they could be earning somewhere else.
Absolutely. And just one other thing, I just wanted to talk to you about these communities that are relatively new, actually. So there's noon.org, run by Eleanor Mills. It's amazing, changing the narrative of midlife women. And I'll introduce to you, Joy, after this meeting. There's another community called 55 Redefined, and I'll just check it out. It's just about redefining, you know, 50-year-olds, but they're doing a lot of work with big corporates around ageism. And they work with age pioneers and getting companies to work with people over 50. And there's Aviva Wittenberg Cox as well, who talks about 100-year life. And guess what? We're in Q3. Hey, that gives a different perspective on it, doesn't it? Q3. So there's some really great influences in this space, and it's exciting and fun and great time to be over 50. And organizations will be looking for you very soon, and they'll be very lucky to have you. So there we go.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for those 5 secrets. I know a lot of women in this community are going to find that very, very, very valuable. And I would just recommend, not everyone is an entrepreneur. We have a lot of women in our community who are building
Sure.
their own businesses.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've recommended to people, if they're not sure, what I am and what I'm not, are you an integrator? Are you a visionary? There's a great book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. It really talks about the difference. And, for some people, they want to be on the team that's building something great. And some people want to be the leader of the team that's building something great.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think if you can identify in your 50s, actually, I want to be a team player, then that going back and getting a job is a great route. If you identify with the fact that, no, actually, I want to be the person leading the charge, there's a lot of great stories. Someone messaged me, Laura Ingalls Wilder. She didn't write her first book until she was like 65, Little House on the Prairie. I didn't know that, that was really interesting. And I heard an interview with about Lucille Ball the other day. So Lucille Ball was in her 40s or late 40s, early 40s, mid 40s when she started her career. And she said she wasn't actually very funny. She said she was brave. She said, I had good writers, I had good scripts, but she said more than anything, I had bravery. And I think, that's the thing, as you go into your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, especially with a career, it's actually about bravery. It's actually about, putting yourself out there and believing that it's still possible. And like you said, we're living in a time period where this literally is the third quarter. You've still got a lot of time
100-year life. Careers are going to be for 60 years. And again, I think that's another thing. So some people have been working flat out. 50, they might be thinking about retirement or changing or downsizing, but lots of people have downsized or run their own business, for the flexibility. And it's like now I can travel. Like my dependents are older. So yeah, it's kind of, so upsizing and downsizing, we should do it. And lots of people at 50 are like, I call it hashtag it's my turn now again. Like I'm ready.
It's my
to get
turn
back,
now again.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, I think these were great secrets. I'm so grateful to you for coming on the podcast and sharing them. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they get into your world?
Okay, well, we're Career Voyage. Okay, so you can find us on LinkedIn. You can find Sarah Taylor Phillips. Follow me on LinkedIn, and we're running a Be Inspired, Get Hired program, and we're running workshops around that on the 15th of May, and we're on Facebook as well. We've got a Be Inspired, Get Hired group. So yes, that's where you can find me. So Sarah Taylor Phillips on LinkedIn, Career Voyage on LinkedIn, or Be Inspired, Get Hired group on Facebook. And we've got 5 secrets. I can send you our 5 secrets to getting hired when you're 50.
Absolutely. We will put that into the show notes for sure.
Cool.
This is a great entry level discussion to the 5 secrets. And hopefully you'll go on to connect with Sarah. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And I appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everybody.